Hey, honey.
Yes, Barry?
Let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Fascina el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin mi naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I'm your host, Barry Kessler, and I'm just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination. Maybe it's even yours, and that's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. That music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants here. Those are the Lapa Lapa, Puerto Vallarta's oldest restaurant on the famous Los Muertos Beach, and the El Dorado Restaurant Beach Club right next door. So you can enjoy that fantastic view of the Los Muertos Pier, all lit up at night in beautiful colors, or during the day in its grand splendor for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Seated with your toes in the sand, right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week, it's the Puerto Vallarta Real Estate Roundtable 2020 with some great professionals. We've got Damian Bassett of Coldwell Banker La Costa, David Pullen of Pullen Properties, immigration attorney Maria Lazareno of KL Mexico, architect and builder Alejandro Loya Garcia from Alo Design, and my buddy Pancho Shani, our friend from Vallarta Factory, the place for chocolates and cigars and booze and great eats. He's going to be talking about schools here in Puerto Vallarta. It's a guide to those thinking about moving to paradise. But before we get to that, let's see what's happening this week in Puerto Vallarta, the 1st of May, 2020. I want to make this part brief because it can't be all lockdown COVID-19 news all the time, right? But we do need to talk about what's happening in town, in the town that we love in Puerto Vallarta. First, the town is on lockdown until the 30th of May, according to the governor and the mayor. Only essential travel to the stores and the markets are going to be allowed. They're limiting one family member at a time. Those who are over the age of 60 are required to stay home, and face masks are required outdoors by everyone. As far as Vallarta Food Bank is concerned, they are now moving tons, yes, that's right, tons of food out to the neighbors and out to the areas that the folks over at DIF have asked them to help. Anyway, there are many food banks around Puerto Vallarta. They're trying to feed these people. But Vallarta Food Bank currently is feeding 2,000 families a week. So please help Jimmy and Francie, the two Francies, Francie Nunez from Bonita Kitchen, and Francie and Jimmy over at Vallarta Food Bank. They need volunteers too. So if you're in town, they can definitely use your help. So you can lend a hand. Reach out to them, go over their Facebook page, the Food Bank Facebook page. Make sure that you bring your masks and protective gear with you if you are going to go help them out. I have links to the GoFundMe page and a Patreon page that they have, and of course their Facebook page. All of those are in the show notes, so give. By the way, Jimmy shaved off his beard and his hair. He did that to raise $10,000 for the food bank. So that is pretty cool. Not only is he giving his time and effort, but he shaved all his hair off. He left the eyebrows. So I don't know how much the eyebrows will cost. I don't know if he's going to, give them up or not, but make sure, do what you can and give to the food bank. They need your help. And also, like I said, if you have Mexican friends that are in town, see if you can contact them, see if you can help them out. I have numbers of certain people as well around town. So if you need their information, you can reach out to me. I will relay their information to you so that we can help out the folks in Vallarta, they got to stick it out another 30 days. That's going to be tough. Now, last Saturday, on April the 25th, was JR's birthday. That's right. We had a Zoom birthday party for JR. Quite a group all over the world came to wish him a happy 80th birthday. We had people from Mexico and Spain and all over the U.S. and Canada. And anyway, we're going to try to have one of those pretty soon again. So watch out. Go over to the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show Facebook page. I'll be posting next week, maybe, and we'll see if we can do another lockdown Zoom whatever with JR. All right, now let's talk about real estate in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Before I get to the roundtable, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening now and why it might be a good time if you've been thinking about buying a home or buying something in Puerto Vallarta. If you've got any money, this might be a good time to make a deal. Why is that? It's because nobody's in town. Nobody is buying the condos. Generally speaking, this time of year and during March and April and May, these are busy times in Puerto Vallarta. People are walking around and looking at property, and they're falling in love with Vallarta and walking into sales offices or calling up real estate agents and saying, hey, can you show me a couple of places? But no one's doing that right now. All the foreigners are gone. Everybody is locked up and locked down. There are projects all over town that are half finished or almost finished or just started. And so a lot of these people are looking for investors to help them get their projects finished. And this just, they may be looking to cut their profit margins so they can actually get it done. So now this can be hard to do, right? Because you're not in town right now, but you could reach out to a realtor and just get a little bit of information, see what's happening, see what's out there. And we're going to be talking, the people that are in the roundtable, you're going to be hearing them talk about different developments that are happening around town. There are many. And they will also be talking about the quality of the buildings and the reputations of some of these architects and builders. We're going to also be talking about the buying process. I'll talk a little bit about that, but we're also going to be talking about real estate lawyers, real estate attorneys, as well as notaries. And you'll hear David Poland talking about some of those. There's some excellent ones in town. And so these are people that will be able to help you as you go through the buying process when you finally get yourself into town. There are also other things that are going to be happening as well. You have investors who have purchased property hoping to have them rented out at good prices, right? During this time of year and all the way, the way that Vallarta was looking, people were renting all the way through June. And some of these investors were hoping to take some of these properties, convert them into Airbnbs, and make some money to be able to, afford these properties. And they may be looking right now at dumping them because maybe there is no income coming to them. It may also be the case that we'll talk a little bit about what happened in the real estate bubble in 2008. You might see something similar to that happening in Vallarta, just because you're going to have people who have been laid off looking to save their homes by getting rid of their rental properties abroad. So these are things that are going to be affecting prices and are going to be affecting the market. You may see a flood of properties come on the market. You don't know. It all depends on how long this lockdown lasts. But you also have to keep in mind that once the lockdown is done, How soon will it be before people feel safe enough to get on a plane and leave their homes? Now, if you ask me, I'll be the first one on a plane to leave the home. Just saying, all right? Now, the other issue is that there are buyers out there who generally, to buy property in Puerto Vallarta, pull funds out of their 401ks or their home equity lines. 401ks may be affected by what's going on right now, and home equity lines are disappearing really quickly again. By the way, if you have a home equity line of credit right now, you might think about pulling the money out and sticking it in a bank account. Now, like I said, negotiating a good price by approaching one of these builders who are in the middle of a project, just so they can finish these projects, that all comes also with a little bit of risk, right? You can make a great deal, but if the project's not complete, if things happen, if they have cost overruns, that could end up being a bad investment for you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the roundtable as well. All right. Now, with all that said, let's talk a little bit about the home buying process in Mexico. First of all, people always ask me, Barry, isn't it true that foreigners can't own property in Mexico? We've talked about this before. They say stuff like, don't you need to be a citizen, or are you going to be leasing it, or how is that safe? Anyway, it is safe if you do it the right way. First of all, we've talked about no ejido land. Ejido is cooperative land. You don't want to be buying any of that. We've talked about it before. It's spelled EJIDO. Look it up if you don't know what it is. Now, many of you guys know that I sell real estate in Los Angeles, California. I love my job. Maybe one day in the not too distant future, I might even be selling homes in Puerto Vallarta. Who knows? But right now, what's the real estate roundtable for the Bahia de Banderas, and we're going to call it the Bahia de Banderas 2020. Now, I recorded this in October of 2019, so this is kind of older news, but it is relevant because what you're going to be seeing is a look into what the real estate market looked like before this event happened, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the buying process. First of all, anyone can buy property in Mexico, but there's exceptions and there's restrictions. In 1973, Mexico passed the Foreign Investment Law, allowing foreigners, foreign investors to buy property anywhere in Mexico, with the exception of what are known as restricted areas. These, according to Article 27 of the Mexican Constitution, include areas 100 kilometers from the international borders and 50 kilometers from the coast inland. Foreigners are restricted from owning land directly in restricted areas, but the law does allow for a foreigner to hold property in restricted zones indirectly through a bank trust. In fact, property can be held two ways by a foreigner. One is to set up a Mexican corporation, and the other is through a bank trust known as a fideicomiso. A fideicomiso allows a foreigner to hold property with all rights as a Mexican citizen. You can transfer that trust to a new buyer, to another foreigner, through sale. You can renew it every 50 years. You can transfer the trust to your family members when you die. And the fees range from $500 to $1,000 to set up a trust, and about $500 to $800 a year to maintain that trust through a bank of your choice. Now, for a corporation, it's more complicated. The fees to set up a corporation, there's a couple of kinds of corporations you can set up, but they'll cost around $2,800 US to set them up, and about $800 a year for an accountant to maintain that with monthly reports and so forth. Now, the reason that you would want a corporation to hold a property is if it's an investment property like a rental condo or a rental home, or maybe it's a property for a business, or it's land that you're planning on subdividing, stuff like that. So anyway, those things, it may be a good idea to set up a corporation, but you always need to talk to a lawyer about that kind of thing. Get yourself a good Mexican lawyer And I am not an attorney, and I don't really, as a real estate agent, we don't pretend to be. Anyway, next thing you do, you want to find yourself a good real estate agent, and then have that real estate agent set you up on a search. Hopefully you have a computer, you can do all that stuff. They have the local MLS in Puerto Vallarta and on the bay. And a lot of these agents also know of other properties that are available. That's why you should really get yourself an agent. They can really help you find some hidden gems. So let's just go through the process here. Remember that purchases and sales of property in Mexico are made in accordance with Mexican law, and purchases are made in dollars. And yes, the purchase price is payable in U.S. dollars. Now, the buyer pays a 10% deposit at the time of signing a purchase and sale agreement, with the balance of that due at closing. Now, if during the process the seller decides to back out of the deal and breach the agreement, the buyer is actually entitled to a fee of 10% of the purchase price. And the same is true if the buyer decides to breach the contract and terminate the deal. Then the seller actually is entitled to keep that deposit as a penalty fee. So keep that in mind. If you can't afford to lose that, you might not want to be buying that piece of property. Now, the buyer is responsible for paying all expenses related to the transfer of the property, except for the capital gains and the value-added taxes that are going to be paid by the seller. Now, the first thing you do, you find the home that you love, and you make an offer. And now the offer should be written, and it should include the purchase price, the good faith deposit to hold the property, which is usually 10% of the purchase price, as I said. You want to be clear as to when that deposit is at risk, and that deposit should be held by the seller's attorney or an attorney of your choice. If the seller requires it to be non-refundable, then you better make sure, like I said, that you're willing to lose that money. Now, the details of the purchase should include the details and time frames of inspections on the property and who pays for what. In Mexico, it's really, really important that you have your agent contact the selling agent once you've written up the offer, and tell them that you have an offer, that they have an offer on the property, and your agent should insist on presenting that offer to the seller in person. Your agent should be the one presenting this offer. That way, the offer is presented clearly, with no outside hanky-panky from a selling agent, and the terms are clear between the buyer and the seller. It is really, really important that you have that kind of representation with your agent. Make sure that your agent does this. Now, once the offer is negotiated and accepted, the deposit is made, and a promissory agreement is drawn up. It's called a contrato de promesa. And this sets up the time frames. You can, at that point, you settle the purchase terms, and then it binds both the seller and the buyer to those terms under this promissory contract. And keep in mind, in Mexico, under Mexican law, both parties are bound by the terms of the promissory agreement. If all the terms and conditions are met to execute the purchase contract, neither party can back out of the sale. Now that the agreement is signed, the seller contacts your bank and that you've chosen to administer your trust, your fideicomiso, and then starts the trust application. Your notary orders a trust permit from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and you're off to the races. As a buyer, you really don't need a whole lot except for money. You're going to need a passport. You're going to need a driver's license as well. You're going to also need a utility bill that shows your current address. The buyer should hire inspectors to check that property out. get yourself an expert in that field. There are good building inspectors in Puerto Vallarta, including one of them we're going to talk to today, Alex Loya. He is on the panel. Now, the inspection is done to alert the buyer to certain defects that are detrimental, items that may lead to major or minor problems in the future, and checking out, the basic things like the electric, the plumbing, the structure, the integrity of the home itself or the condo itself. In the States, actually in California here where I work, I tell my clients that just because your inspector points out issues and problems and concerns, here in the state of California, homes are sold in as-is condition, just like they are in Mexico. So the inspection is just for your information. And with that information, you can decide if you want to go through with the purchase. Remember, if you ask a seller to do something for you, let's just say you say, I want you to repair that before I move in. That could be an issue. That could be an issue because he can have it pick whoever he wants to have the work done. You're not guaranteed that it's good work. Whenever you do something like that, you might want to ask for a credit or something of that nature rather than have that seller do the work for you, okay? Because coming back to that seller later, it's going to be very, very, very different, very, very difficult, okay? Now, the way that fideicomiso works is the Mexican government issues a permit to a Mexican bank of your choice, allowing the bank to act as a trustee for that property and naming you, the purchaser, the beneficiary for that trust, and you holding the title of that trust. Now, the beneficiary rights are very similar to living wills, estate trusts, and so forth in the U.S., and like I say, they need to be redone every 50 years. You're going to hire a notary or a real estate attorney to run this transaction. In many cases, a good notary will be all you're going to need. Oftentimes, you might consider an attorney as well to maybe double check on that notary, someone who you trust, someone who might be able to hold a deposit, for example. At any rate, the notary or your real estate attorney will check title, check for encumbrances or liens on this property. Does the owner owe the government money, for example? Does the seller have the right to sell this property? Is it theirs? And so on. So they will, if all's okay, to sell the property, the notary will obtain a certificate of no encumbrances, a certificate of no tax liability, and a property appraisal. The notary or attorney will work with your bank to write up your trust documents and finalize them. And by now, both should be able to execute the purchase or sales agreement or the compraventa. And at that time, the closing process starts, transfer of title and stuff like that to the fideicomiso. Now, by this time, the bank office should have received the permit from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Your attorney will be able to start the drafts for closing the deed. Your lawyer or notary and a bank trust officer will then review the final draft of the deed. Firstly, they'll verify that everything's correct. Secondly, when all the closing paperwork is ready, you'll get a notice of a due date and the final closing costs that are due. And finally, you'll sign the deeds, payments will be settled, and the title transferred to the bank. The notary then issues a notarized copy of the closing deed, and then this is your first proof of ownership, and you can use it to start your utilities in your name. Within 3 months of the closing date, the public registry issues the final deed, and then while buying property in Mexico, the delivery of your land, by the way, and taking of title are two different steps. They can take place on two different dates. This means that you don't immediately take possession of the property at closing. Finally, you do a final walkthrough to ensure that the property is being handed over in good condition before you take it. And then once you're satisfied, you sign a delivery statement, and this details the official delivery date of your property. Now, keep in mind that your attorney can handle the entire process, and as a result, you don't necessarily have to be in the country for every step of this process. So that's the process in a nutshell. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to expound or clarify on the process. But right now, let's get to the roundtable, shall we? Let's listen. Real Estate Roundtable, Puerto Vallarta 2020. All right, well, we are here with some very distinguished people. We are here with Maria Lazareno. She's going to talk about immigration. David Pullen, he's a broker, he's a realtor. He's going to talk about luxury properties here in Puerto Vallarta. I have Damien Bassett, who is a real estate agent here in Vallarta. And I have Alejandro Loya, who is a architect. And my buddy, Pancho Shani, who put this whole thing together. Thank you, Pancho, for doing that. So this is a roundtable. We're going to be talking about real estate, and this is basically designed to help people who are lovers of Puerto Vallarta, who are maybe thinking about coming to Puerto Vallarta, buying a piece of property here and retiring, or maybe investing. This is going to be, I think, very valuable to them. So I know none of you people have been, except for Pancho here. Pancho is a veteran. He's been on the show before. But Damien, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and what was your path that led you here to Puerto Vallarta?
Sure. My name's Damien Bassett, and I am part of the Johnson & Bassett team. We brand ourselves as mypvrealty.com and on other social media outlets. We work with Coldwell Banker La Costa as our broker, and they've been in this area for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. We have 4 offices, Punta Mita, Guayabitos, here at Olas Altas, and Marina Vallarta. I don't know if my associate David Johnson and myself, if our story is really unique in any way, because I think a lot of people did the same thing as us. Approximately 3.5 years ago, we visited Vallarta a few times and absolutely fell in love with it here. After careful consideration and preparation, we decided to leave Canada and become permanent residents of Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
It's the magic of this city. It wasn't really a cultural shock because a lot of the things we find in Canada, you actually do find here in Vallarta. And that might not be a preference of the old residents of people in Vallarta, but it is a reality. It is a fact. You do find Walmart here. You do find Costco. And that was kind of a cool thing for young guys like us. We were like, well, we just don't want the 30 below snow weather anymore. We want to live near the beach. It was a dream of ours. And here we are.
Wow. So what part of Canada are you from?
Barrie, Ontario, Canada.
Ah.
So the cold part. One of the colder parts.
Cold, yeah. Nice.
It's pretty chilly. So we chose to start our real estate careers in Vallarta by teaming up with kind of a more institutionalized name like Coldwell Banker. And I always joke around and say that Coldwell Banker is much like the Coca-Cola of real estate brands. It's a name and brand that people tend to trust and can confide in. We're usually dealing with a lot of money when it comes to real estate, and that's why we wanted to build our personal brand under a name people could trust and confide in, and we've kind of gone from there.
Yeah, it's something that you can recognize. That's fantastic. Coldwell Banker, everybody knows. Well, that's not my broker, but okay. Anyway.
That's okay.
So it's all good. I had to say that just in case my broker was listening. So let's move on. Let's talk to you, David.
Sure.
David, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're from and what was your path to Puerto Vallarta.
Well, this is a long story, but I'll make it very
short.
I'll make
story,
it very
okay?
very short.
Yeah.
I came here at the end of '89. So I've been in the business since basically 1990 till now, so it's almost 30 years in the real estate business. My company that I joined at that time was Puerto Vallarta Real Estate, Bienes Raíces, S.A.R.C.V. My partner and myself was Sylvia Elias. Sylvia and I opened PV Realty in 1994. I'm still a major shareholder in that company, but I separated from that company about 5 years ago, and I formed David Pullen Properties. David Pullen Properties is a boutique company. It's in the marina. We have, like I said, many, many years of experience. I'm a certified international property specialist, certified residential specialist. I have many diplomas from the Tec de Monterrey in real estate law, and real estate services. I have many certificates throughout the years. One of my things was throughout the years is to learn and to study. So I never stopped learning within this 30 years. I'm always taking courses and always educating myself on the system. I was president of the real estate board for Puerto Vallarta for 7 years. I stepped down about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was the chairman of the Committee of Honors and Justice for the Puerto Vallarta Real Estate Board, which I have just stepped down about 2 months ago, thankfully, because there have been a lot of complaints that we've been dealing with. Oh. And it was a lot of work. I mean, one thing is is helping AMPI, which is the association which I was president of, and one thing is helping the committees and everything else. But there comes a stage at times that you have to concentrate on your own business and let other people do that. And I've decided to do that right now. So our company dedicates itself to luxury real estate. We actually, most of our business is luxury, but we quite frankly sell everything. Some years we sell, last year we looked at, and we sold a $25,000 property and we sold a $5 million property. So it's all across the board. We don't turn anybody down. We are choosy on properties that we take care of if we feel we can do the job. If we feel we cannot do the job, then we'll tell our clients very nicely that maybe we're not the agent for them. They need to find the right agency, or we'll put them in contact with the right agent that can do the job for them. So we take on mostly everything, but we are a little bit specific at times.
When you talk about luxury, in Puerto Vallarta, luxury is different in all parts of the world. So what do we mean when we talk luxury in Puerto Vallarta, as far as condos, homes, villas, whatever?
The number for me really is about 750 and over.
Okay.
If you were asking me the question at the end of 2007, I would say to you about $1 million, $1.5 million and over. But our market has changed. We went through an interesting period from 2008 to about 2013, where many people in the States were affected with the financial situation, and they were trying to offload their properties or save their properties in the States and offload their properties in Puerto Vallarta to save the properties in the States. So a lot of them were underwater in the States. 2013, we started to see traction in our market again. But it was funny. Many years ago, prior to 2008, it was almost not a standard joke, but it was interesting in our office. We'd have people saying, what do you think that client is willing to spend? And it was always $1.5 million, $2 million. There were so many people with so much money, and they were very, very young, looking to spend that money until the market changed. The bubble popped.
Yes.
Today, our market has gradually risen to where it is right now, and there's a tremendous demand at this time. But if you compare it to that period, the average price on properties is lower today than it was prior to 2008.
Interesting.
So our market's changed.
Wow, yeah, it sure has.
They're more condo buyers and they're less house buyers.
Tell us about, there's a lot of condos being built here in town, okay? Have you got any idea how many projects are going on right now?
Well, the MLS here in Vallarta is regulated through an association called AMPI, who is the National Association of Real Estate Professionals. So selling real estate in our area can still be like doing business in the wild, wild west in a way.
Yeah.
It's really the purchaser or seller who will define if they want to stick with a professional or broker who's affiliated with the professional association. And when we list properties in the MLS, the documents, deeds, taxes, and so on are put up for review by AMPI to make sure the seller has all their ducks in a row, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
We always much rather do business within the association of professionals and developers. So if we took a look into the MLS right now, we would say in terms of pre-construction developments, you could count around 13 to 15 developments between Cinco de Diciembre and the South Shore that are actively being built. Again, this number is actually higher because there's developments that haven't chose to work with a broker or are not concerned with being approved by AMPI. So, again, this number really is higher.
Interesting.
And prices range, I guess, from about $130,000 US, and obviously the price can rise dramatically into the millions. And when we're talking about a competitive price per square meter, I think the development's offering at about $2,600 US per square meter. Is a competitive price.
Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. So when they're buying, you were just saying that you're dealing with money, like a lot of money. So these buyers are buying cash, or is there, with these projects, I mean, do they have financing? Are there any mortgages that are available for people?
Well, I've personally, maybe David, his depth goes a little bit farther than mine. Again, I've been here 3 years, so I've yet to find a developer that is giving away units with the use of a mortgage. Developers will often offer different options for purchasing with a greater discount attached to how much a buyer is willing to put down in cash. Mm-hmm. For example, let's say if they were to give a cash option, this would be 30% down, 60% in monthly payments, and 10% at delivery. This kind of cash option might deal you with a 15% discount from a developer. Now let's say you chose the financing option. And this would entail 30% down again, 30% in monthly payments, and 40% at the signing with the notary. So let's say you receive about a 10% discount with this option. You can see in both of these, you still need the 30% down.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a significant amount of money. I've seen some interesting developer advertising tricks. I believe the best developer options could be the ones you sometimes see could offer money into escrow until delivery. And I think that would appease a lot of Canadians, Americans, and Mexican purchasers, knowing that their money is kind of safe, because everyone has that objection of, is my money safe? Are they gonna finish the project?
Yeah.
Or what's going to happen if they stop halfway through? So, I mean, I don't see that a lot, but I'd like to see that more. I know we see that often in Canada. They don't depend on the money to finish a project. But I think I've seen it a few times.
Just to interrupt you, Damien, for 1 sec.
Yes.
What the tendency also is to send money into escrow and then have a clear flow of the money out of escrow towards the developer. Because often it's very common that you have a developer that, they receive the 30%, then they receive the payments on a monthly basis directly. But to make it perhaps even a little bit more efficient and a little more legally adept, if it goes through escrow and then it flows from escrow as per the agreement and the corresponding engineer or committee that's overseeing the actual building of the development, and they say that it's at a certain stage, now Mr. Escrow Company, in conjunction with everybody, release the funds.
Exactly.
That's a more of a clean way, I think, of doing it. Not that we do it, not that it's done that way all the time, but it should be done, I think, like that.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so if a buyer comes to like a new condo project, let's say, it goes to the office, is it kind of like in the States where they can bring along their realtor, the realtor can represent them in the sale?
Yes, buyers are able to bring their realtor that they trust to come and get information with them to the development and see this transaction through as well. You always want to choose a good realtor. Aside from the due process, we also have negotiating skills. Often what a developer is offering isn't always what you can get away with in terms of pricing. There are developer pricing, it's up to your realtor, to go to bat for you. And that may be able to negotiate a better deal for a better unit. Uh-huh. It is a possibility. Buyers just need to be aware about when they get to a development and they are not with their realtor, they need to verbally tell the on-site representative that they are working with a realtor, and they register themselves at the development with their realtor's name. This way, the realtor isn't at a loss if the clients like the development and want to move forward. It's very hard to do this after the fact because the developer regards this as their own lead if they don't mention the realtor's name.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it's done in California, at least. So that's good to know. And remember, if you have been running your real estate agent all around town, and he's been showing you property, and then you trip into a condo,
and you go, oh, this is interesting, show me around. Now you just lost your realtor, and now you're going to end up being represented by the developer. So keep that in mind, all of you, okay? Mm-hmm. Don't dump your realtor for a developer, seriously.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the advantages of buying a newly built condo as opposed to buying a previously owned condo. What do you think, David?
I think there are a couple of things that you need to take into consideration. First of all, the history of the developer. What sort of assets or what sort of potential bonds does that developer have to protect you as a buyer? When I say history, what have they done in the past, in Puerto Vallarta specifically? When you're buying a pre-sale, you're always, as Damien mentioned earlier on, you're subject to potentially the market may change. And all of a sudden, these guys often are using the money of the client to end up building that building. And if things change, how are you assured that that building is going to be complete? Now, it's wonderful doing that in a very good market, like the market we're presently dealing with, but I've been in the business for 29 years in Puerto Vallarta. So I've seen it go up, and I've seen it come down, and I've seen people that have got stuck and have lost money. So you have to be very, very careful of what you do. With a second, if you want to call it a second-hand condo, a pre-owned condo, you know that there's a condominium regime. You know that there are rules and regulation that it's been completed. With pre-sale, often the condominium regime hasn't been done. Therefore, it's legally on paper not done. And you're sitting there and you're not knowing exactly what potential problems there may be in the future. So I think that pre-owned is very secure because everything's in place. Mm-hmm. You know, you might have to do your inspection, everything else that you do. But on a pre-sale, especially with a developer that's not very well known, I would say buyer be very aware of what they're doing and take the necessary steps and get a lawyer involved to make sure the contract that they're dealing with is the correct types of contracts. What we deal right now with developers that say, this is our contract, we cannot change it. Okay, that's great. You cannot change your contract. But you as a foreign person, especially buying in Mexico, that perhaps doesn't know the procedures, get a lawyer or get a very qualified real estate agent that works on your side, that understands the type of contracts, and seek legal advice and pay a little bit more for that legal advice to be assured that you're doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah. Don't be foolish. Make sure you get yourself a good lawyer. Then let's talk a little bit about what you were just talking about, David. You were just talking about how things might change during the building process, and maybe this won't get done, or maybe something changes, and maybe there are cost overruns that maybe would make other units more expensive, or maybe they would come back to the buyer and say, hey, we can't finish your place without more money. I mean, does that happen?
It's happened. It's happened on a number of occasions, not a number, a very small percentage overall in Puerto Vallarta through the years. One to the north that I'm aware of, one on the hillside, where they essentially, the developer came back and said, you know, we've got a loan, or we've got a mortgage against this. In order to get your title, you have to pay us an additional $40,000. So that is scary, no? So you have to be, Vallarta, like I said, there's a very small percentage of pre-sales and developers that do not finish what they're doing. Most of the developers that are building in Puerto Vallarta right now have a history. They've completed the projects, and they're doing a very good job, and they're very cautious. And a lot of them have made enough money through the years that they could finish the building on their own versus using other clients' money as well. But I would say to you, just be very cautious. If the market starts to turn, make sure that your development is going. Your first sign, perhaps, of concern would be when they give you a project. They call it ruta crítica. In other words, how long it's going to take to complete that project. So when you start to see your money's being sent out according to the supposed time they're supposed to finish it, and they start to slow down, then you might have to be a little bit concerned. Why are they slowing down? You've sent them the money. Make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and make sure that the contract doesn't penalize you for not making the payments in the right time, if for any reason they slow down in the progress of the construction.
Interesting. Wow.
Or I've seen even sometimes now they have clauses in the contract that if they don't meet their delivery date or certain points in the construction.
They do, but honestly, when you look at most of the developer contracts, I don't blame them. Maybe if I was a developer, I'd do the same thing. But the developer contracts really protect the developer.
Yeah.
So you need a good attorney or a good agent in conjunction with attorney that takes a look at the corresponding contract and gives you good legal advice. But that's also very good for you and I, Damien, as real estate people, because we are not lawyers and we shouldn't pretend to be lawyers. Exactly. So if you have any concern or doubt at all, you should be saying to your client, hey, you know what, you need legal advice on this, so your client can make the decision based on sound, solid legal advice.
I totally agree.
Absolutely. All right.
There are a number of good attorneys in Puerto Vallarta. There's Garcia Masin, which is an attorney which is located slightly to the midtown. He's an attorney that is dedicated to real estate. There are a number of notaries that you can consult with as well. Fernando Castro, which is notary number 5 in Puerto Vallarta. Another exceptional notary, in my opinion, is Marco Antonio, which is located in Bucerias, Notary Public number 2. He's a doctor of law. So he's one of the gentlemen that if I was consulting, I would most definitely speak with him as well. Another lawyer who acts as a criminal lawyer and a civil lawyer is a gentleman by the name of Attorney Antonio Flores, which is downtown as well. He's an excellent attorney. So, he doesn't speak a lot of Spanish, a lot of English. He's a lot of Spanish. But his English isn't that great, but he's a very, very good attorney. So if you're looking for good advice, there are great attorneys over here, and then nothing compared to the price that they charge in the United States of America. Right. So, it's affordable. If you don't take that step, it's going to be at your risk.
Exactly right. Yeah. Don't do it. Don't be stupid. All right. Let's talk about association fees real quick. Can you give us some ideas as to monthly costs of, like owning property in Puerto Vallarta as a condo?
I think association fees can vary. It depends on how majority of the owners in a building will want their building to operate as well.
Okay.
Do they want a cheaper monthly payment? Do they want the building painted every year? Is there building insurance, a reserve fund? I'm seeing a lot of the new construction. We can round it off to about 40 pesos a square meter is where they start.
Okay.
But, as they get built, as the association and all the units are being sold, these prices can rise. I see them. They come to market early. They say 40 pesos a square meter, and they can rise. And especially when buildings are also older, oceanfront, insurance is a bit higher. More maintenance is involved. So, safely, without scaring anybody, I'm going to say 40 pesos per square meter.
All right.
Again,
so what is all right?
It's going to vary.
What is that? What is that on a 1,500 square foot house?
An average. It really to understand the, which I'm sure most of you know, the actual. How do they define the actual maintenance fee on the building? They look at the actual square meters of private area and they divide it amongst the common area and they give you a percentage. So every building, so a 3-bedroom condo technically would have more ability or more voting rights than a gentleman that has, let's say, 100 square meters in the 3-bedroom is a 300 square meters building. He would have a greater percentage of ownership over the common area as well, and he would have the greater right of decision when it comes to the final votes on the annual, what they call convocatoria or assembly every single year. But it's a hard question to answer, Damien, right? Because what happens is, it depends on what are the amenities the buildings are providing. Mm-hmm. Do they have the pool? Do they have the gymnasium? Mm-hmm. And there's sort of like a point in a building as well. If you have 20 condominiums, you'll find that those 20 condominiums will ultimately be probably more expensive on a monthly basis versus 120 condominiums. There's a number. There's a number over there. Finally, when you get over a certain amount of units, that maintenance fee actually comes down. So what are the maintenance fees offered? What are they concierges? Are they not concierges, et cetera, et cetera? Mm-hmm. So really you're looking at, let's give an example, 120 square meters, 150 square meters. You're probably looking at about $350 a month, approximately, give or take. Uh-huh. But then again, it depends. Is the gas included? Is the water included? Sometimes they're separating that out right now because some people are saying, we don't rent our place out. Why should we be paying common gas fees for Mr. Jones upstairs that rents his place out all year round, 80% of the time, and we here for 4 months out of the year. Doesn't make sense. So some buildings, newer buildings, are starting to separate those out. Mm-hmm. So, but then you can get up to, a 12,000 square foot penthouse on the hill where you're paying $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Yes. So it really depends, what is the size of your unit, what are the amenities that are offered, and the quality of services that you expect. And you're going to pay for them, but I'm going to tell you those prices are way, way less than anything comparatively that you can compare in Canada or in general United States of America.
Yeah.
Yes. You're probably paying a quarter or half of the price that you'd be paying over there.
Okay. All right, so David, you came with some statistics for us as far as properties that are available, and maybe you can talk to us about that a little bit.
Sure. These are really general statistics about the market, but I think it's important that people know what number of properties we have on the market. We're not a huge market, but in terms of dollar volume, we're coming close to about $500 million in actual listings, not technically in sales, but in listings. But if you look at our listings year to date, as of September this last month, which includes condos, houses, land, commercial, business listings, and multi-family listings as well. We're up to about 1,970 listings on the market at this moment. What is really interesting, and this has totally done a 360 turn from when I was in the market 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, we had a lot of houses on the market and not many condominium buildings. We had Lapa Lapa, El Dorado, and just a few properties oceanfront that were on the market, but mostly it was homes. So presently today, total condos in the market as of September 2019 are 938. And that doesn't include, as Damien mentioned earlier on, there's some buildings out there that people aren't even in the MLS systems. The developers are trying to sell their buildings on their own, and those don't even register in these numbers over here. But total houses on the market are 391. So if you look at it, their total condos plus homes is 1,329 listings. And what's really interesting is there's 70.58 or 541 more units of condos than there are of homes. So there's 70% more condos on the market than there are homes. So it's 938 condos on the market and 391 homes. So there's a big difference.
Yeah, there is.
And one of the things that we've noticed is the price per square meter. You can go to one of those beautiful homes in Sierra del Mar on the hillside in the gated community, exclusive community, and you can look at a price per square meter, and you'll find if you compare that price per square meter for that luxury home, which has used some of the very best materials, it's less expensive to buy that house in terms of price per square meter than it is to buy a property downtown in Los Muertos Beach as a condo per square meter. So the condo prices per square meter are in general much higher these days, unfortunately, than it is for a home in a very luxurious area with better materials. The rest of the listings are made up of land, commercial, and business listings. The average list price in 2019 is about $395,000, $396,000. In that range, the average sales price is about $307,000 approximately. The active listing volume to date is approximately $435,690,000. So we've got a lot of properties. It's a big number. We're approaching close to $500 million worth of real estate on the market in Puerto Vallarta. And what is interesting is the absorption rate. So if we look at how long it would take us at the present sales rate to sell these properties, it would take us about 15.19 months.
Wow.
Now, if you go back to 2009, when we really hit a tough patch, we were looking at an absorption rate. It would take about 4 years to sell the inventory we had in 2009 to sell it out. It would take us a 4-year period, or almost a 5-year period.
Right.
Here it'll take us about 15 months approximately. Sales to original listing price ratio, which is interesting. So if you've got your property on the market right now and you've got a price at $100,000, what can you expect to sell it for? You can expect to sell it at about $93,500 US. So we're talking about 6.5% below the asking price, which is pretty healthy.
Yeah.
That's actually come down from a month ago. It was 95.5%. So we're selling close to what the real sales value of that property is. So another thing that's interesting is September 2019, average days on market. So how long does it technically take for a property to sell? That's about 194 days. Okay. But if you compare that to September 2018, that was 321 days.
Yeah.
So we've decreased substantially. So I think those are statistics that are really interesting. It gives you a sort of a nutshell or a brief synopsis of what's happening in the local market. And the tendency is that houses are selling quicker, prices are going up, and it looks pretty healthy at this moment for us in Puerto Vallarta.
Nice.
Pleasure.
Well, you can tell that he is the past president of the local MLS. He knows it by heart, right there, right off the top of his head. No, he had it written down. When a buyer is planning on making an investment in Puerto Vallarta, let's say they buy a property and they're thinking about renting it out. Now, I know you're not in the rental business. But
I don't do a lot, no.
No, but you do sell homes to people that will end up leasing them out, maybe. Even if they are expensive homes. So, do you ever steer people towards a property that might be more easily rented? Make a better rental property if they're looking to make an investment.
I do, and it really depends on. There are different types of clients, obviously. So you have that very wealthy client as well. That not very, very wealthy, but wealthy enough in the sense that he wants to see some income coming out of that property because he's not going to be here all year around to cover some of the operating costs. I find my extremely wealthy clients don't rent their properties out, generally speaking, because they have 5 or 6 or 7 properties, and they might be here for 2 months out of the year, and they don't want anybody in their dominion or their domain.
Right.
So, but when it comes to properties that are rented out on a continuous basis, so let me back up there. So those wealthy clients are very different in terms of what they're renting out, and the price is very different because we're talking thousands of dollars potentially a day. But if you go to somewhere that's on a bit of a budget and he's planning on spending $150,000 to $300,000, I would say to the client, look downtown, look in probably the romantic zone, look beachfront and see what you can find. I would go, even if it's a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom, there's always a demand for a 3, there's always a demand for a 2, and always a demand for a 1. There are those 3 different subsets of clients out there. But I would say to you the area that's most popular right now would be the Emiliano Zapata area, the Los Muertos Beach area, because you're very connected here. You're connected to restaurants. You've got the ocean a couple of blocks away. You just got a lot of things to do, and it's very social in the downtown area. Some areas, for example, that I think are really interesting right now are Versailles. That is kicking in right now. Versailles. I wish I had earned all the money I deserved to earn on all the advice I gave to so many people through the years on where they should invest before it became popular.
Yeah.
And that's the case for Versailles for me, and that's the case for 5th of December. 5th of December, you're seeing it as well. There's Ariel Grunwald, I think it is, that was the partner at Pier 57. He separated, I believe, and now he's doing a development called La Colonial, which is downtown. That's a really interesting area. 5th of December, what's happened downtown when you got places like Pier 57, they're asking $4,000 a square meter, and Alfredo Torres, the developer that does a beautiful project and very expensive, but $4,000 a square meter is substantial. But then you can go to areas like 5th of December or Versailles where you're paying $2,500 a square meter, even less, maybe slightly more in some cases. And 5th of December has come to that point right now where it's taking over a little. It hasn't taken over. It's gradually changing. And you're going to see people coming in with a different mindset. They're coming and saying, let's clean the streets. Let's make it pretty. You have people that urban developers working with people like Ariel saying, you know what, it's coming. Let's fix the street. Let's clean the street. Let's give back something to the community. Let's teach the kids English. Let's make a park. Let's make a park near the stadium for the kids. So it's very community involved, which I like to see in Puerto Vallarta. So you have a lot of developers that people have complained about that are take, and don't give much back. But I look at somebody like Ariel and I say, oh my gosh, this guy has really got a sense of community. So I think we're starting to see that in areas like Versailles and areas in 5th of December.
5th of December.
The marina area. You have V Marina. I don't know if you've looked at many of the V projects. David, the gentleman that owns, David Herman, is the developer, one of the developers, the main gentleman for Grupo Heva. And I have to tell you that this guy does an exceptional job. I mean, the quality of his construction is incredible. He has a lot of people buying his building. I think he's got about 70% sold out in his building, which is in front of Starbucks in the marina. About 70% sold out. But that is a lot of people buying that for the purpose of renting those units out as well, which is a phenomenon that's happening throughout the Puerto Vallarta area. So the marina has its resurgence as well. The marina was a little slow, but now there's a tremendous demand for the marina because in the past there wasn't much happening there. So I think right now downtown is a super area for downtown, even south. Not too far south, because you go too far south, then you're not as connected as downtown. And people want to be walking. They want to be close to downtown. I'd also look at areas like Sion Beach, Inda, which is a building on the Santa Barbara Street, Sion Beach, Sion Tropical, where there's a tremendous demand. And I wouldn't doubt if you don't see fairly shortly another big building going up in the area of Santa Barbara Street as well. And because it's a 5-minute, 10-minute walk into downtown. So those locations do phenomenally well. But it's a different price range. The Inda, the Scions are, $650,000, $700,000 up to $1.5 million, $1.6 million in that range. So it's a different market. But it's a market where you're still getting $400, $500, $600, $700 a night. So it's something that people should be interested in if they're in that price range.
Good. Excellent. So are there, you're just mentioning some projects that are in construction right now. Are there condo projects that are finished that you would recommend?
Most definitely in the slightly higher range, probably Sion Beach, Sion Tropical, Inda, which are located on Santa Barbara Street. Those are extremely popular. V Luxury, not V Luxury, excuse me, V Conchistinas, I think it's the other one is it Conchistinas, the one on the hills? V Amapas, V Marina, which is in the marina area, Roma, which is in Versailles, which is done by Carlos Gonzalez, which is they built Pavilion and they built Zenith, and they built about 7 or 8 other buildings in the Bucerias area before they came here. They are extremely popular. Then you've got Soho that's coming online. It's Alfredo Torres is building 120 units above where the gas station is. It's going to be quite a substantially tall building in that area. And there's so many new ones coming on board. But if I was a client, I'd be looking at the history of the developers, how they've performed, and their contracts, and make sure you get, like I said, good legal advice. One more thing, I think I mentioned V Marina in the marina, but that's also another building that I would look at the marina, because I think the quality and the product that they're doing is exceptional.
So what about up north? What about Bucerias?
Bucerias is a really fascinating market, which is another market that has just kind of exploded again, and there was a lull. So you had, as I mentioned earlier, Carlos Gonzalez that built a lot of, the company's called Craxa. They built a number of buildings, 6 or 7 buildings in Bucerias, Beachfront, Azul, and there were numerous. I can't remember all the names. But there was a lull in the market because at one stage the Canadian dollar went up to the US dollar. In other words, they were par. So a lot of Canadians had bought in the buildings prior to that. And at the time the US dollar came to par with the Canadian dollar, some of them took the jump and they invested, which was a perfect time for them to invest. But it didn't, unfortunately, the Canadian dollar didn't last too long on par with the US dollar. Then it dropped, I think, 25% to 30%. So you had the buyer that had been looking at the property 3-4 months ago, and the dollar dropped, and they couldn't justify to themselves paying another 25% to 30% more. So it's a huge Canadian market in Bucerias.
Yeah, it is.
And so that market kind of went away for a while, and now it's come back, even though the dollar exchange rate isn't really that favorable. It's just maybe people have got short memories, right?
Right.
And
and they can't remember that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what happened? I missed the boat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. Bucerias is very interesting because now you have developers that are doing frontline condos. Most of those front condos are gone. So now you've got people like Mesa, Eduardo Mesa, Monroy, and these people, Stone contractors that have come in and built some buildings in that area. There's a new Barracuda. Then they built a building up above there. Then there's a building about a block behind them. They built a 2 towers, and they're pretty much, as far as I know, sold out on that tower as well. So there are about 6 or 7 buildings, I think, or 8 that are in process in Bucerías right now. So I think you're going to see a real surge this high season in the Bucerías area. But this is also something that spreads to Nueva, right? So Nueva Vallarta, you've seen quite a bit of increase over there with like the Peninsula, with Felipe Tomé that did. They've done a lot of buildings in that area. Felipe Tomé is a very well-known developer on a national basis. You have the other torre, excuse me, of ¿cómo se llama? I can't remember. Anyhow, Cantamar, or I can't remember the other development. But
Maritima?
No, it's gosh, I've got a senior moment here. Anyhow, a number of those developments are kicking off, and they're doing second phases right now in Nueva Vallarta. And then if you go even further north, you see the San Pancho market. There's not much for sale in San Pancho.
Right.
And they're kind of restrictive in terms of what you can do. There's been an issue with one of the condo buildings on the beachfront that people have been battling with. Yeah. And then you have Sayulita, which has had its own set of issues through the years with a lot of issues, but it is improving a lot. But Sayulita is more prone to housing, and then not too many condo buildings in that area yet because of restriction. I think there are restrictions on heights.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I think Guayabitos and those areas are moving as well. As you go like an hour from Vallarta, 45 minutes to an hour, every single area has grown, and every area continues to grow, and there's a client for every area.
Is it different doing business in Nayarit over Jalisco?
It's a different process of the construction is the same, but there are different requirements in terms of construction. So I won't go into all the differences, but there are differences from a constructor's point of view in the state of Nayarit, and there are additional costs than you would find in Jalisco. But in terms of just generally doing business in real estate or doing business as a business person in general?
You're the first.
Okay. So in real estate, for us as agents and brokers, it puts a different load on us as well, because we not only need to understand a lot of the Nayarit laws, we need to understand the laws with regard to Jalisco as well.
Yeah.
So if we're instructing our clients in the state of Nayarit, which most of us are most of the time as well, we kind of split our time 50-50. The things that we need to know to better advise our clients on a continuous basis. And laws change and requirements change. Yeah. So we need to be up to date with all that information to advise our clients clearly on what to do.
Sure. All right. So thank you, real estate agents. Feel free to jump in later. Let's talk now to the builder,
Alejandro Loya.
How are you, sir?
Hey, Barry. I'm pretty fine. Thanks for the invitation. Pretty excited to talk a little bit about what the people need to know when they are thinking of doing some construction here, whether it's remodelation or just a start from the land, right?
Excellent. So let's talk about that. Let's first of all, tell us about your company, Alo House Design.
Alo House started about 4 years ago. Started as a few friends, architects, all of us. Not necessarily as a company. It was more like a buffet of architects where we can support each other while we were doing different projects. So each project had different head to manage this project, right? So we support our backs there. We don't necessarily do one thing in particular, which can be just construction. We also do the whole project, which means the designing, selling the major project, which is Proyecto Ejecutivo. We do the remodelations. We do inspections as well. We do interior designing, which is pretty much the first 2 or 3 years what we get the most. For lately, we are pretty much on the remodelation stuff. We don't stop just with houses or apartments, condos. We also went a little bit with some of the hotels designing, some of the interior design just for these companies, and also We focus lately these last 2 years pretty much on remodelation and also maintenance. We get involved with the maintenance because a lot of our old contractors that hire us ended selling properties like David Poland does, and after we get involved with them, when they're being the maintenance company to be with, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's pretty much what we are doing lately here in Vallarta, in this area of Jalisco. But we also go all the way to San Pancho and Sayulita, where we had some of the business offices that we had done as well in there. And interior designing went pretty high on Flamingos and all of the area, Del Canto, and Marival including Marival Hotel Resorts. So that's what Alo House
Yeah, you guys
is.
are busy.
Yeah.
You guys are busy.
We didn't stop we didn't focus on one thing. We pretty much are trying to cover.
You are diversified, my friend.
Exactly.
You are all over the place. I love that. All right. Well, that's what keeps everybody fed, right? Keeps it all going. So when someone comes to you, let's say they've already purchased the land or the building or whatever they want to add on to their house or just knock it all down and start all over again. I mean, that's what you love to do, right? You guys love to do that
Exactly.
stuff.
Well, most of the time, people that bought in Vallarta they buy here because they liked what is Puerto Vallarta, and usually what they buy, it's just the land or an old house or an old building. They always want to keep what the house used to be because it have a soul. Most of people call it like that. So they want us to stick to that plan,
Nice.
just make it better and not necessarily modern. They just want to make it exactly. So you have a particular taste of Vallarta, which that's what people is here.
Right.
What
And
is
you,
Vallarta.
and you like clients like that too, right? Because you want you like the old style buildings. Oh no, you don't, do you? Okay, he's looking. Oh, come on, Barry.
I definitely love Vallarta. I'm not originally from here, so when I move here and I see all of this magical little pueblito, the little town vibe that you see everywhere, and specifically in the architecture, that make you understand your customer even more, right?
Yeah.
And so some of these people come here. Some of them are really afraid of I'm not hiring a guy that is just going to give me something that I'm not looking for, but. Well, one of the first things that you do is go and visit the land, right? And then you get to know this person and you get to know what they are looking for, what they want. So it makes it easier, and especially if you understand or you share the same feeling of this area, which is this bay of Puerto Vallarta.
Nice. All right. I like how you work. So, tell us the process. Someone comes to you, they come with a plot of land, they say, I want to build on this. What happens next?
We start with conceptual ideas, right? So after we get to know each other and we are really in the same, we can work together. Because as David mentioned before, there is some work that you cannot do because you can understand that the people, you don't get along with something that they are looking for, right? There is people that is looking more for a modern building. For example, which is not exactly what we are doing lately. But when you get to that, do you know that you will go along with a project and with this person, and you will make them, you will give them what they are looking for. We start talking about money, obviously.
Yeah, right, of course. Well, isn't that the first question? Come on.
No, because it can vary a lot. You don't know what the person is going to. How far it will go.
Right.
And there is people that is just trying to put some money in Vallarta and make it as a business, rented Airbnb, which became really popular lately.
Yeah.
So that's one of the main questions that you do. You are going to own the place, you're going to live in it, or you just will spend some vacation in there. And depending on this, you start building a relation of what they want and how you can help them with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that vary a lot.
Right. Very good. All right. So then once that's all done, what does it take? How long does it take maybe to do a project? Let's just say that this person isn't changing their mind every 5 minutes and telling you, no, I didn't want the bathroom there. I wanted the bathroom over there. Let's just say that, yeah, you're right. You don't ever get a project like that, do you? It never happens ever. Okay. But let's just say that everything was moving pretty smoothly, and you're building maybe a 1,500 square foot house or something like that. How long did it take you?
The design process is not that. It can take just probably 4 weeks, but it all depends a lot
For the design, you mean?
Exactly, and then. This is always this is something that always happens. You have this customer, you get something to get in the solid project, and you are already on it, working on it, and there is somebody else that is a friend of the friend, and then they ended meeting them at the bar, or whatever, and they give new ideas. So it always changes, to be honest. So it can be up to 2 months to have a real design, a solid real design, which at the end, when you are doing the construction, it changed a lot as well.
Yeah.
Permits. As soon as you have the design and all the project on paper, the proyecto ejecutivo, you have to go to ayuntamiento, which is the city, and you have to stick to the rules, which Vallarta have some specific rules. You have to keep the Vallarta style, the roofing, the teja roofing, some palapa, depending on where the area is where you are trying to do this, right?
Cool.
And especially if it's Jalisco or Nayarit.
Right. They're different, right?
Exactly.
Interesting. So it's like the historical society gets in on the picture, right? They say they want to make sure that everything fits, that it looks like it belongs there, right?
After your customer approve your project, you have to go to the city, which will also approve it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so how long does that take to the city? I mean, how is the city with approving projects?
Some people say that it's really tough, the way they go to you, but I find it easy because it's so simple rules that you have to follow. I found it more difficult when your customer wants to do whatever he wants, even when you read them these rules. You are like, you have this and that you have to respect. This is your limits. And there is some customers that push you to the edge of it, and even a little bit more. And they are more like, let's see what happened, and then if they deny it, we modify the project. So that's all the things that you add on the process of design.
Yeah, there's always somebody
Exactly.
there wanting to do something different.
Exactly.
Okay. What's the most difficult thing about your job, about being a builder in Puerto Vallarta?
What we just talked about, I won't call it difficult, but
it seems in Puerto Vallarta that so many people get involved in the project that somebody's trying to do. So as Alex said, that many times he'll be designing something, he'll have the design set, and they'll meet somebody at Dolce Vita, we'll sit down with them that potentially could be another architect or somebody else, and they come back with changes, and they make changes. So I think, as far as I know, with a lot of the architects, sometimes those types of things are the most difficult thing, is getting to that executive project of design where the client said, okay, let's move ahead. And it's better to get to that executive and take longer to get to that executive project versus changing it later on, because once you start to make changes, it becomes expensive. And I think, as Alex has mentioned to me in the past, one of the difficult things is when you have a price and you start to make changes, the clients have to be very clear when you're making those changes, it's going to cost them more. And clients are not always prepared to pay more,
right?
Even though they want the changes.
Even though they want more.
That's true.
Yeah.
So that's number one thing I can say. Number two, a lot of the people are also build something back there in Canada or United States or other places in the world. And it's never the same, the way the rhythm of the construction, the way it goes here, rather the weather, the people, it's a lot of facts that make everything a little bit different.
Right.
So I can see some frustration sometimes in some of the customers. Other big concern there is when the customer is trying to be there the whole time, and he tried to speak in English to these workers, and they don't understand the best. So sometimes you even get that the customer was expecting something a little bit different than what he asked, and you give, or your worker give, right? But other than that, I think everything is. If you follow your program, nothing goes.
Everything should fall into place as long
necessarily
as
hard.
Yeah, and yeah. Okay, so do y'all hear that? Stop changing your minds. Okay, so like in the States, a lot of times if you're doing remodeling, some of these people don't go to the city with a plan or anything like that. What kind of construction would you consider that you have to go to the city? In other words, if you were to walk into a house and they said, I need new tile floors, I need you to add a bathroom, but not changing anything on the outside, is that something that you need to pull a permit for?
Depending. If you are making like a major remodelation inside, yes, there is some licenses that you have to pay. You have to talk to the city. They will send somebody that will not necessarily manage, supervise, so they know that you are doing the right thing.
Okay.
And
a home inspector, right?
It's generally an inspector from City Hall that will come by to take a look at what needs to be done, and will come by to not supervise the job,
right,
but to see that you're doing it according to what you specified within your permit.
So they come.
You have a plan that you have to get approved.
But if you're doing minor things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, you don't really need a permit. But if you're doing, if you're removing all the floor in the house and changing a lot of things, then
if it's not structural, you will be fine. If you are not changing the kitchen and putting there now a big living room and stuff like that, there is where you will need this inspector. But if it's just new tile, new textures, even new electrical, you will be fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
All right, good to know.
That's actually I have to mention that when you buy a used place, there is most of the times you have an agent that will do an inspection of this property, right? And then in order of following what the inspector says, you will decide if you keep, for example, your tile or your pipes, and then
as an inspector, Alex, for example, has done inspections for us in the past as well. So he's very good, and he'll go in and he'll look at the house from all aspects, from a structural aspect. If he needs to bring in structuristas or engineers to look at the structure, they'll do that. Look at the piping. He brings a plumber. Brings electrical. Checks for all the grounds. If there's any stuff to be done, that would be within your inspection as well, to replace certain things at a later date. When they acquire the house, or normally that inspection condition is subject to the clients purchasing the house, or knowing at least what's wrong with the house, how much money they have to put into the house, or going back to the seller and saying, I want you to discount $5,000, or it's only a couple of $1,000, I'm going to move ahead anyhow because I really want this house. So Alex does that work as well. He does the inspections, and then he also comes in later on and does the work in order to correct what needs to be done to bring the house up to where it should be.
A big percent of the people that do the inspection ended, like, not necessarily doing a full remodelation, but yes, they ended fixing whatever it is suggested by the inspections.
Excellent. Wow. So you're the guy to know. You know, hire Alejandro to do your inspections when you're buying a used house, and I mean, I shouldn't say a previously owned house. And he'll fix it up for you too. That's pretty cool. Am I missing anything? Is there something that we should cover before I move on to our next guest?
Well, in the personal, just feel free to call me anytime that you need some advice of it, to do something in Puerto Vallarta. I will be happy to introduce you to what the world of designing and this construction can be. I love to share my ideas with people. Not necessarily if you have to work with me at all, but I will always be happy to instruct you there, especially that I have family members that are already been through buying a property here or fixing a property here, and I have these people, that the whole team that can help you anytime.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to have all of Alejandro's information. I'm going to have everybody's information. You'll be able to find them in the show notes at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com, of course. And I'll have all their smiling faces and all that other good stuff. But this is all great information. All right, let's move on. I want to talk to Maria now. And Maria, she's here to talk about immigration, the immigration process, which really, I mean, that has a lot to do. People that are buying homes, a lot of them are looking into that immigration process. So before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? And are you from Puerto Vallarta?
Of course, no.
No, you're not. Where are you from? What was your path to Puerto Vallarta?
I'm from Alaque. It's a town near to Puerto Vallarta. It's like 3.5 hours driving from here. And I was living in Vancouver for 6 months.
Yeah.
And my degree is attorney. And I don't know, I was thinking about to stay in Vancouver, but to study again lawyer.
Lawyer, you got it. You nailed it.
Attorney.
Uh-huh.
And it was too hard for me, like, to stay there and to study again the law degree, the law career.
Right.
And that's why I decided to come back to Mexico. And I have some friends here in Puerto Vallarta, and I stay with a friend. Then I start working in a company who does immigration service, and they are the outsourcing from Vallarta Ventures, and I was employed from them.
Ah.
And now they are my clients.
Excellent.
Yeah,
All right.
I started my own company since 2016, and the name is KL Mexico. And I've been doing this about the immigration service since 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, like 5 years.
For 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Excellent. All right. So when someone starts the immigration process, actually, before we get into that, let's talk about why it is that someone who's buying property should be looking into the immigration process.
In my opinion, I think it's really important because when they get tired about the property, they want to sell it. And they also want to reduce the capital gains. And one requirement is to become temporary or permanent residency. That's the important thing for me, my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to help them monetarily when they go to sell the property.
Yeah, but also with another requirements that to become a permanent or temporary residency doesn't mean that you're going to reduce the capital gains. They also need to complete some other requirements with the notary and the real estate. It's a temporary or permanent residency. Permanent resident, they can leave and get back any times that they want.
Right.
Yeah,
So they don't have to stay. They don't have to split. They don't have to leave town after 6 months.
No.
Yeah. That's important
Yeah,
stuff.
that's important.
Yeah. All right. So when someone starts the process, where do they do that? Do they do that in Puerto Vallarta? Do they do that in their permanent resident, the place where they live? Where does that all begin?
It depends. Because it's really important to let the foreigners know that is many categories under they can apply for a temporary or permanent residency. One of the most common are retired pensioners and the workers who are still working in United States or Canada. On that case, they can apply at the Mexican consulate nurse to their home, United States or Canada.
Okay.
But also is another category that is unit family, is for those foreigners who are married with a Mexican or if they have kids, son and daughter, that can apply here in Puerto Vallarta or Nuevo Vallarta. It depends from the address too. Yeah,
Okay.
but they can also apply here at the immigration office or they could apply at the Mexican consulate, but it will be necessary to confirm that information with the Mexican consulate because not all the Mexican consulate approves that categories.
Right. That situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and another important thing is about the work visa. Also, you can get a temporary residency for the work visa, but the work visa process, it needs to be started on the place of the company who is going to hire you.
Okay. So the work visa. Okay. So that's totally different. So you got all kinds of different things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
different.
Okay. All right. Well, we need to know all the categories, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between permanent and temporary residency?
Okay. The case of the permanent residency is a definitive residency. This means that you don't have to worry about to renew your permanent status. Inside of the temporary residency, this temporary residency allows to the foreigners to be in Mexico for more than 180 days and less than 4 years. And after 1 year as a temporary resident, you will need to renew up to 3 years more the temporary residency status. And the permanent residency, you don't have to renew in this case.
Okay. All right. So, but obviously there's more involved in becoming a permanent resident than
Exactly.
than
Yeah.
a
The
temporary.
requirements, for example, for the permanent residents are higher. The income of the savings that you will need to prove to the Mexican consulate will be higher than the temporary residency.
Oh, okay. All right. So what are those? Do you know what they are right now?
Yeah,
off the top of your
for
head?
sure. For the retired or pensioners are $1,100 for the last 12 months. I'm only balance $110,000 for the last 12 months. Or if you are, if you're receiving a pension, you can prove that with the last bank statement. The bank statement for the last 6 months with a pension around $2,500 for the last 6 months.
Okay.
One of the others.
So it's either you have $110,000 in the bank, you're showing a balance of that, or you're showing that you are getting a monthly payment.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's only for the permanent residency. This is to apply at the Mexican consulate, yeah? Mm-hmm. But also, if you have a kid with a Mexican, you can go directly by having a kid, showing the birth certificate and other requirements, and you can get the permanent residency.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's an advantage of having a Mexican wife or husband, aren't there? All right, look at that. Yeah. All right, so what are the costs?
The cost for the permanent residency, the visa, because the first step, if you apply at the Mexican consulate, you will get a permanent visa, and the cost is $36. You will need to pay that at the Mexican consulate. And once you get back, you need to continue with the process at the immigration office, and the cost with the immigration office for the permanent resident card is 5,056 pesos, Mexican pesos.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is about 250 US. Tell me about the legal fees.
Okay, on that case, when a foreigner came with a visa to start the process with me, I charged around 4,000 Mexican pesos. That's my fee for the permanent residency. But if he wants the whole process, like getting an advice to go to the Mexican consul to fill out the application, all that stuff, around 5,500 Mexican pesos for the permanent residency.
Okay. And then you guide them through the whole process.
Exactly.
At that point.
Yeah. At that point, I send the visa application fill out. I make the appointment with the Mexican consulate. I give the advice how to do the interview and all that stuff. And I make the payments at the bank when he come back to Mexico to complete the process at the immigration office.
Okay. Now, I saw that people were coming in the airport. They were coming in and they were showing their temporary or permanent resident card when they came in. They got in a different line too, I think, as far as I know. You have to tell them that you're coming back and forth, don't you? That you are actually wanting to be a permanent resident. You have to inform them at the airport, or
when you apply for the visa, the Mexican consulate, you will get the visa stamped on your passport, and then when you arrive at the airport, you have to show that visa, and you need to tell them that you are applying for a permanent residency. And in that case, they will give you a small form. That small form will means that you are going to continue with the process for the permanent residency. That's the important thing, because if they don't tell that, they will come as tourists, and they will need to go back to
the consulate, probably?
No, the
start
consulate.
Over?
No, only to leave the country and to return again to make this in a good way.
To make it right?
Yeah,
to
it's to make
fix
it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
And it happens a lot of times.
Yeah.
It happens a lot of times.
So it's important, you guys, if you're going for that resident, permanent, or temporary, you need when you return, you need to tell them, right?
Yeah, exactly, to show the visa. I'm applying for a temporary permanent, and I need the stamp. And the immigration agent has to write 30 days. It's important to check that the immigration agent marked 30 days.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got to watch them too, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I need to get back a little bit about the big difference between the temporary resident or permanent residency. Another big difference is becoming a permanent resident that allows you to work as independent or as employee for a company. But if you are a temporary, you need to apply for a work permit. You cannot work until you request the work permit with the immigration office. This is another big difference.
Yeah.
The most of the people that apply for work visas or work permits here in PV are usually people that are involved in some capacity in the sales and marketing industry. So whether it be real estate or timeshare or anything regarding sales, those usually, or even the service industry, those are the three main scenarios where you'll have someone apply for a work visa here.
Okay. All right. You got something to add to,
Sure,
David?
and it's important because immigration does do inspections. I remember a funny story many years ago at a company downtown that's still there, but it doesn't do much business anymore, that immigration came in and actually arrested one of the clients because he had his briefcase, and they thought he was working there, and he said, "I'm not working here. I just came in to talk to my real estate agent." But the immigration came in and actually took him away until he could prove that he was actually a person living here and was not actually operating. So immigration will do the inspection. My office was inspected last year. They came in and they just wanted to check that everything was in order. And these are not very sporadic, but these types of things do happen. So make sure that, if you are working, get the correct permit to make sure that you actually are doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Great advice. So what else do we need to know about the immigration process that we haven't talked about so far?
Okay. The time period to complete the process about the permanent residency here in immigration office will take around 25 business days, between 25 business days, 35 business days. The law marks that needs to be completed in 20 business days, but being realistic, that never happens.
Right.
And that's why is the time period is between 25 or 35 business days.
Okay.
To complete the process. After getting the visa,
right,
you come back because you're going to get, the foreigner interested is going to get the visa. The visa will be valid for 180 days. That means that the foreigner needs to come to continue with the process before the expiration date of that visa. And once the foreigner arrives with the visa, needs to complete the process, and that will take around 35 business days. And they will get the permanent status or permanent resident card or the temporary resident card. Yeah. That is only talking about for those who are retired or pensioners who applies at the Mexican consulate, because we also have different categories that can be started here in immigration office, but talking about the unit family, having a son, a daughter, Mexican son, a daughter, or marry with a temporary or permanent residence. That process, it takes a little more, like 2 months.
Okay.
Like 2 months.
A little longer to prove that you're marrying a Mexican.
Yeah, because that kind of case, the immigration office from Guadalajara needs to study. And for the other case, they only study here in Puerto Vallarta.
Interesting.
That's why it takes so longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to know?
It's the same time period to complete the process for the temporary and the permanent residency.
Often clients will ask us, I'm not a temporary resident, I'm not a permanent resident, but I heard if I purchase real estate, that process can be expedited more quickly.
No.
Do they have to, can they not be not be a temporary resident and
go directly to the permanent?
After they've purchased?
No, because as I say, many consulates, Mexican consulates, they accept the category under having a Mexican property. That means that if you prove that you have a Mexican property in Mexico, that the value is around 3,400,000 Mexican pesos, you can go directly to the temporary residency or no permanent. But if you have the income for the permanent, you can go directly to the permanent. But that's only to get the visa. That process will take 1 to 10 days at the Mexican consulate. 1 to 10 days, but you must come back to continue with the process to get the temporary or permanent resident card. That will take around 25 business days.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
there's no way
question.
to speed it.
No way to speed it up. Okay. Well, you don't need to speed it up just yet. You're not going to be selling your house the next week that you buy it, so you should be okay.
But it happens sometimes. On the case on the real estate, many clients, because I work with some real estate that has clients for when they want to sell a property, they want to speed it because I'm selling my property and I want to reduce the capital gains.
Sure.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
happens a
they
lot of
start a
time.
little late when they start thinking
Yeah,
about that, huh?
that's why it's really important. I recommend to start before pushing a property.
Yeah,
If
right.
they have an income to buy a property in Mexico, they have the income to prove that to the Mexican consulate.
Exactly
That's
right.
my opinion.
Well, that's a good opinion. I think you nailed it. Is there anything else? Did I miss anything? Is there anything else we need to
let
talk
me-
about, Maria?
Another important thing, as a permanent resident here in Mexico, it's not allowed to drive a foreigner plate car. Yeah, It's really important. Once you become a permanent, you are not allowed to drive.
So
yeah.
if you drive your car into Mexico and you're coming to live here, there's restrictions, right? They're gonna tell you to do something with your car, like sell it, right?
Yeah, to sell it or to get it back. Yeah,
Right, yeah.
to get it back.
All right. So
And,
what's that? What's the law on that?
for the
That will
temporary,
depend
who
on
are
the car.
temporary.
If the car is old enough to apply to make to legalize the car
Yeah.
as a national car, you can keep it. But if it's a brand new car, I don't remember if it's 7 or 5 years that they allowed the car to be old.
It's
What
around
is it,
7
Maria?
years.
And it
Is it
always
7?
change.
Yeah, around 7 or more years.
There's also
It's-
there's also a restriction as far as manufacturers go. So if they get Japanese cars, for example, in certain cars, even if they've gone past that mark or that period of time, you technically cannot regularize those cars.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chevys are okay, right?
I think so.
All right. Glad to hear that. Anything else?
And for the permanent, you that allows you to drive foreigner plates, and the permission to drive for this car will be for the same time as your temporary resident status. But you need to request that permission on the border
Okay.
or before arriving.
All right. So these are all really important things for people that are moving down here. First of all, if you're bringing your vehicle down, remember all that, and remember that when you do cross the border, people forget this. When you cross the border, you need to fill out a form, right, and let them know that you're bringing your car down.
Exactly.
I think it's like 50 miles past the border is when you have to, like, if you're going farther than that, you have to say that you're doing that.
On the border,
Yeah.
well, you need to.
Or
yeah,
just do
it's
it right
in
at the border.
Aduana. The name is called La Aduana.
Okay.
You need to find Aduana to get that tip. The name is the permission is
Right.
something like
The TIP.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good to know. Anything else?
I don't have to
Okay.
say anything else.
Well, if there's nothing else, why don't you tell us how people can get a hold of you?
Okay, well, they can reach me on my website, www.klmexico.com, or on my Facebook page, that is KL Mexico. That is the name of my company. They can find my phone number, my email, and all that they need.
Okay,
or
good.
WhatsApp. Yeah.
Fantastic. Or WhatsApp. Okay, so I'll have all that information in the show notes too. So when you need to get your permanent or temporary residency, Maria is here to help you with that.
Yeah.
So Alejandro, let's talk about price per square foot, price per square meter, or whatever is easier for you to do. Give me an example of what's going on there.
Yeah, well, that's a really common question for somebody that is planning on doing some construction, and it can vary a lot. But now, lately, it's about $1,000 per square meter, which is a square foot is about $93, when a square meter is about $1,000. It's an approximate, depending on your quality of what you're building and where you're building, whether it's Jalisco or Nayarit.
Or Nayarit, yeah.
This is for construction from zero. When you have the land and you start from the beginning. If you are doing remodelation, it can vary so much that I cannot even give you a number
Sure.
right now. But this all will depend on the finishes that you're expecting, and then can also vary going upper or higher if you are trying to do it in Nayarit. Why? Because it's farther. Most of people is here in Jalisco. All the labor, the workers are here.
Yeah.
So when you are trying to do some work in Nayarit, especially Bucerias, and then you go farther La Cruz, and then you go to San Pancho, you will get
You're adding hours, aren't
by
you?
5,
Yeah.
and then 10, and then 15% up. It
Really?
can vary a lot.
Yeah.
So
Oh wow. Okay. Well, that's very good to know.
it varies as well, as I mentioned earlier. If you are planning on do this construction for business purposes, which can be renting it out, usually cheaper. Why? Because you don't put top quality in it, right? And I'm not saying that this $93 per square foot are top quality, but you will get pretty much.
It's kind of a standard.
Yeah, it's
good quality.
Yeah.
Okay,
Definitely.
not crappy.
Not at all.
Uncrappy. All right. All right. Pancho.
Yeah.
So I have Pancho on today because Pancho has actually been to school here in Puerto Vallarta, and you went to the American school.
American school, Puerto Vallarta. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was a very unique experience because one thing is to, learn a language, and another is to get immersed into that culture and kind of understand how everything works. I also had a unique advantage on top of that since my dad was from the States. Most of my aunts, for some reason, decided to marry Americans.
Wow! All right, go aunts.
So it's I grew up celebrating both Mexican holidays and American holidays.
Yeah.
So, and I have friends here in Mexico. When I'm here in Mexico, they don't look at me as Mexican; they look at me as American. But then all my friends in the States and Canada, they don't look at me as American. They look at me. It was like, oh, hey, where's the Mexican at? So I guess everyone who's bicultural kind of grows up at first with some sort of identity crisis as to trying to figure out, well, am I more Mexican than American, or am I more American than Mexican? I was like, I'm sure at some point that pretty much happened to you when growing up from your own roots, as to trying to distinguish who you were when you were growing up in South Africa.
I'm originally from South Africa, so I spent 20-something years in South Africa. Then I spent about 4 or 5 years in Toronto, Canada. And then here it's been pretty much 30 years. So I haven't lived in a place longer than Puerto Vallarta. I mean,
Look at you.
Most of my life's been spent in Mexico versus where I was born in Africa.
Okay.
So it's a long time. So yes, I understand what you're saying after being here first. Well, you were born here. I wasn't. But I spent the majority of my time kind of growing up into my later years in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah. And the Spanish is pretty good too, by the way, you guys.
Thank you.
No, not you. You're natural. You're a natural, man. This South African over here can speak Spanish. All right. So tell us about the school. What's that like? So
it's a nonprofit organization. Started back in the late 80s. And it's a very unique situation that they offer, because not only do they have a dual credit system, whereas someone who graduates from American school can go to any accredited university, not just in the United States and Canada, but anywhere else in the world. And they have guidance counselors or college guidance counselors that would literally take you by the hand and walk you through the whole process, which is something that other bilingual institutions like the John F. Kennedy School in Monterrey or the American School in Cancun don't have. And they've had it now for the last 20 years. They also give out TOEFL tests, which is the English aptitude test that you have to take when you're applying for college. Before, you would have to go to Guadalajara or Mexico City. When I was applying for college, that was obviously I had to go to Guadalajara and go through the whole process of taking the TOEFL test. But the other thing that's so unique about the American school is you can now take advanced placement courses. So if you're 10th or 11th or 12th grade applying to a college in Canada or the States, you can take an advanced placement course for English, Spanish, science, biology, physics, and I believe one more. I forget which one, but that's something that they didn't have, they weren't offering when I was there. And now, because you have that, it just makes it that much easier. Your freshman year can be very mind-boggling. So any courses that you can get out of the way from your core courses, it lessens the load, so to speak. So that's one advantage also. The other thing I wanted to say was They have a dual credit with the SEP, yeah, and also through the University of Colorado. So you can actually now take college courses. You can take a psychology course, a sociology course, or a biology course that you normally wouldn't be able to take when I was taking when I was in high school. Now you can take the course and actually get an actual grade.
Yeah.
It's not just pass or fail. You can actually get a grade that goes into your average GPA for your first year. Even though, everyone has a hard time their first year. It's like, you're lucky to get a 2-point GPA average your first year.
Oh, yeah, especially with all the beer, but we won't go there. So,
yeah.
It's worth to mention that there is also a few teachers that are recognized by American school, and then they also give you the class, not necessarily class, how do you call it? The structure of the subjects.
Curriculum.
Yeah, curriculum. Yeah, so there's these curriculums that you can also have and choose them as well. I'm sure American school can do this, and there's probably other 2 schools that do it, and plus private teachers that are originally from rather Canada, United States, and even UK. And you can find that too if in your case you want to have your kids at home your first years in PV. That's an option that I had personally seen. It became really common to see. You have private teachers in your place that you can also afford.
Yeah, neat.
One thing is, sorry, just to add, I have a direct example of some younger girls that grew up in Canada, then they came to study, they lived in Mexico, they finished at the American school in the last 7-8 years, and they really drive you at the American school. You have to work. I mean, it's not an easy peasy school, where you just sit there and you just sit back and hope to get the minimum grade. If you're not working at the school, this is apparently my understanding, you're not going to make it. Yeah. And when you get out of the school, you're generally pretty qualified because they make you read a lot, they make you investigate a lot. And I know this case of this specific girl that went to one of the best schools, universities in Canada, and she was very concerned coming from the education system over here from the American school going to Canada. And it was actually pretty easy for her because there were a lot of things that she found the Canadian people that had been educated in Canada just didn't have the schooling to compete with what she had learned at the American school. So I think that's super positive for the American school. They've got a strong curriculum. They really drive their students. And a lot of these students right now, not only are they studying, a lot of them are studying abroad in Europe, England, and there are a lot of scholarships that these people have to some of the very best universities in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just in my graduating class, we had people going to England, Canada, the U.S., Australia. So yeah, we even had one student who scored the highest SAT score for all of Mexico, and she got offered a full scholarship for Harvard. And that was her name is Betty Mesa. She's one of Dr. Mesa's daughter. She's a brilliant girl. She didn't end up going there. She went someplace else, but that just gives you an idea of like the type of caliber of students that are coming out of Puerto Vallarta.
Absolutely.
Or more specifically, American School of Puerto Vallarta. Another thing to add is they have a huge involvement with community outreach and pretty much just touching on the entire environment right now. They just received the Global Leadership Award by Thai Care International for their outstanding support and constant resolve to do projects that not only inform but also inspire and touch on the issue of self-sustainability and the environment. Just a few months ago, they had a sustainable fair. And the one thing that came from that was one of the biggest tour companies in town, Vallarta Adventures, ended up going to the fair. And they got so inspired that from one of those projects, they made a decision to only use plastics that were not polymer-based and were only biodegradable. So from straws to cups to plates were all used with some sort of a biodegradable ingredient, either from avocado seed, banana peels, you name it. Most of the restaurants in town are going through the no straw campaign, right?
Right.
Because I mean, it's just, if you just focus on the bar alone, I mean, you'll see a bartender dish out half a bag in less than a day. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of straws a bar goes through in a night. And of course, where does that all end up? And it's mostly plastics that can't be reusable. So, yeah.
All right. So these people that come to the American school, is it taught bilingually? Is it all in English? How is it taught?
So every single class is taught in English except for Spanish.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's physics, calculus, your earth science. It's all taught in English. And then your Spanish lit or Spanish Mexican history or what we call civismo, which is civics, is taught in Spanish. But other than that, everything is
English.
in English.
All right. So, do you have any idea what tuition runs?
Well, it's been a while. Last time I was there. When I was there, it was only close to about 20 years ago.
It was a million years ago. Don't tell us. I don't want to know. All right. So we can look that up.
It depends. I know there's two price points if you have someone in kindergarten or primary as opposed to high school. I do remember that primary at the time was a little bit more expensive. Back then they were paying around $500 a month, which is quite a nice chunk of change.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're in the States or Canada. However, what you receive is tenfolds. I mean, just personally, most of the classes most of the subjects that I was looking at in history and math when I was in my first year of college, I had already seen my 11th and my 12th year of high school.
Wow.
So
that's a bonus.
Yeah, that was a huge bonus.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So are there other schools like that in Puerto Vallarta? Someone's moving. They're going to be. They're not speaking English. They're not speaking Spanish. They speak English.
Since then, there's been others. There's a British American school.
Harkness Institute, it's actually located in Nueva Vallarta right now, near the Marina of Nueva Vallarta, and it's considered one of the best schools as well because they really actually help a lot of kids that do not have financial capacity, but are considered brilliant kids, and they put them through their program, their curriculum, which is quite intense. So they was started by an American from Chicago. He was involved with another school, then he left that other school and started this institute recently as well. So, but there are a number of schools in Vallarta.
The Anglo-Americano,
British American.
ISPAC now is a little bit more.
There's Campo Verde as well.
Campo Verde has. They have like a bilingual program, but it's not a complete immersion like the American school does.
I think in terms of what Pancho was saying earlier on regarding the double credit system. So you get, when he said the SEP earlier, that it's the Secretary of Public Education, which is a requirement in Mexico to get that diploma in order to graduate in Mexico. But also in the case of American school, it's one of the few schools in Vallarta, well, maybe the only school, I'm not sure it's the only one, I think it's one of the only one that also gets a credit from the university or from the Colorado system, college system.
Right, that so offers the college courses.
College credit.
It is one of, I think, the only one in Mexico that's currently doing that.
Because you get basically the SEP diploma when you finish school, that you've completed your school, and the ¿cómo se llama? The preparatorio.
Yeah.
And then you get a degree, or not a degree, but a diploma from the United States of America, saying that you've qualified with that educational format as well. So you're recognized in the States and worldwide, plus in Mexico as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice. Cool. So looking back at how you would compare the education that you got here in Puerto Vallarta with maybe some of your buddies in the Army that you that graduated from high school in the States.
In the States.
How would you compare the education you got with some of these guys?
How to put this delicately. No, it's not I'm not going to say that the quality is different. I'm going to say that it's more inclusive and more culturally diverse and enriched as opposed to the American academia. I'm not going to say that they shouldn't change some things, but it's probably obvious that the amount that we're exposed to is probably not the same as what they see as a high school student sees in the States or in Canada, for example. That's probably one of the biggest things I saw living in the States and just, working with other people from many walks of life or many ethnic groups. That's probably one of the richest things, I think, or the most important things I think the American school has to offer.
Right. Well, this is now. Is there something that we need to add? Is there something else that you want to talk about?
I think we covered it all.
I think we nailed it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a very comprehensive discussion on buying and selling and becoming legal and getting educated and building houses in Puerto Vallarta. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today and putting in all this great information for all of my listeners. And once again, make sure that you go to the website and check everybody out here. I'll have all of their smiling faces and all of the contact information as well. So once again, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, that's really what I wanted to say also, is Pancho set this whole thing up. So, Pancho, thanks for doing that, brother. I really appreciate it, man.
Pleasure.
I like it. I like it when other people do my work for me. I just love it. Thanks again, man.
Anytime.
All right. Well, that was a long episode for sure, but packed full of great information for those of you who are looking to move to Puerto Vallarta or invest in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Now, check in the show notes for the contact information for all of these wonderful professionals. You can find it over at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. I have contacts for all of them. And if you're thinking about buying property in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, give me a call. Maybe I can help you set up something. All right? All right, everybody. That should do it for this week. Stay tuned for next week. More on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico with travel tips, great restaurant excursion ideas, and more. But until then, remember that this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, well, please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, you must go to vallartainfo.com. That's JR's website, and reserve your tour through him right from his website. Remember, this is a value-for-value proposition, my friends. His experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you're going to use someone else, so do it, really. And when you take one of his tours, one of these days, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And don't forget, he's got his maps, he's got his DIY tours, his revitalized happy hour board, and more. I have links to all of those in the show notes. And once again, if you like this podcast, then please take the time and subscribe. Give me a good review on iTunes, if you would. That way we can get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Remember, I made it easy for you to do just that with each episode I create. But if you haven't been to my website, you really need to have a look there. I have links to the places we talk about, interesting pictures and more, right there in my blog posts and in the show notes for each episode of the show. So check them out for sure if you haven't already, all right? All right. Well, thank you. Thanks to everyone on the panel. Thank you, Damien Bassett of Coldwell Banker La Costa, David Poland of Poland Island Properties, Maria Lazareno of KL Mexico, Alejandro Loya Garcia from ALO Design, and Pancho Shan from Vallarta Factory, where you can get your chocolate, your cigars, your coffee, great drinks, and good eats. I have all that information in the show notes. And hey, thanks for talking the real estate process in the market with us here on the Puerto Vallarta Show, talking about the building process, Puerto Vallarta schools, getting permanent, temporary residency, all those things that you need to know if you're thinking about making a move to paradise. Make sure to donate once again to Vallarta Food Bank. Don't forget, you guys. And thanks to all of you for listening all the way through. This is Barry Kessler signing off with a wish for all you to slow down, be kind, and live the Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
De Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Ahora solo camino eterno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río cuando todo está en calma. Pronto cae la noche, brillas Puerto Vallarta, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta.